right, good evening. I'm going to call to order the Wilmington School Committee meeting of Wednesday, April 10th. If you could all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tristan, for the record, if you just make note that Mrs. Burns is unable to join us this evening. And our first item of business is always our consent agenda. We have a few items, not too bad this evening. The first one would be the approval of minutes from our regular session, March 27th. Anybody like to offer a motion to approve? Mrs. Newhouse, thank you. Seconded. Mr. Ragsdale, thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes? That would be unanimous. Thank you. And we have a couple of grants this evening, sponsored by Wilmington Educational Foundation, and these are their curriculum grants. The total amount is $4,915.64, but I think we have some of our recipients here. Would somebody like to introduce? Hi. All right, do we have anybody here from WEF that would like to introduce?
I'm from WEF.
Excellent.
Actually, the amount has changed.
Ooh.
Only because when I was re-looking at everything for tonight, noticed that in one of the grants that we are renewing for this year, that we had given last year as well, we used last year's figure instead of this year's. So it's a different amount of $4,940.81.
$4,940, and I'm sorry, the cents?
81.
81, okay. All right. And do we have some of our recipients here this evening?
I believe these ladies are, yes.
Excellent.
Are you with this Spanish teacher?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I don't know if you want to explain maybe what you're going to use some of these for?
Okay, so we applied for a grant to work on our level 2 Spanish curriculum, which focuses on the Caribbean. We try to break up our Spanish sequence by region, and so Spanish 2 focuses on the Caribbean. And we wanted to incorporate more experiential learning into the curriculum, so we found a group called Jorge Arce and his Humano Multicultural Project. He's an Afro-Caribbean drummer, musician, artist, and he brings a workshop into schools to teach the kids more about the Caribbean cultures. So the portion of our grant that was funded will be to work on the curriculum to give that program some context.
Great, thank you, and congratulations for being a recipient. Do we have any? Okay, we have Caitlin Scarfo here.
I teach first grade over at the Industry School, and the grant that I applied for was for STEM building materials. I have a lot of first graders who love building and designing, and I do some morning choice time where they come in the morning, and as they're all kind of trickling in, they have choices of different materials that they can build and design with. And I had other options as well, different math games and reading games and whatnot, but they all were kind of gravitating towards the building materials. And kind of looking through what I had in my classroom, I didn't feel like I had that many options other than pattern blocks or cubes. And so I put in a grant to get more materials for the students to build with magnet tiles, some things that I had never really even used before, but some different they're like discs that you can put together and build designs with, and all of them come with different task cards so the kids can look at the cards and try to replicate what's on the cards. So that's something that I'm looking to use during our morning time, and then hopefully throughout the year to do some different STEM challenges, things like, for example, maybe building like a leprechaun trap, or things that are using their designing and building skills. So that's great.
Thank you, and congratulations on your award. That's great. Thank you. Any other? No, I think we're good. Okay, so we have an approval before us with the corrected amount of $4,940.81. Thank you very much to WEF, as always, for providing these opportunities for our staff and our teachers. Would somebody like to offer a motion to approve this grant, please? Mr. Talbot, thank you. Seconded by Mr. Bjork. Thank you. All those in favor? It looks unanimous. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you very much to WEF again, and congratulations to the recipients. We look forward to hearing more. That's great. All right, next up are our warrants. We have the G 425, 426, 427, and G 428. We have the revolving R 234, 235, 236, 237, the local 73, 74, 75, 76, and food service 28 and 29. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve? Thank you, Mrs. Bryson, seconded by Mrs. Newhouse. Thank you. All those in favor? That would be unanimous. Thank you. And then we have a payroll warrant for week ending April 10th. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve that, please? Mrs. Newhouse, thank you. Mr. Ragsdale, second. All those in favor? And that would be unanimous. Thank you. Next up are our circuit breaker warrants. We have CB 20 and CB 21. Would someone like to make a motion to approve? Mrs. Bryson, thank you. Mrs. Newhouse, thank you. On the second, all those in favor? That would be great, with one abstention, Mr. Bjork. And finally, the SPED warrants, SPED 39, 40, 41, and 42. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve? Mrs. Bryson, thank you. Seconded, Mr. Talbot. All those in favor? And we've got two abstentions there, Mrs. Newhouse and Mr. Bjork. Thank you. And that concludes our consent agenda. Next up, we have our student representative report. Ms. Jordan, would you like to share with us, please?
So after April break, which is next week, the seniors will have 1 week left of classes until they begin their internships. Spring sports have begun. I don't know if you guys saw track going on today when you came in, and there was tennis today, baseball, I believe. So there's a lot going on right now. And girls lacrosse has 2 new coaches this season, Mr. Manchester and Mr. Kligerman. And I believe the new assistant athletic director has been helping out with girls lacrosse as well. And last night at the freshman history fair, freshman Akash Chatterjee won with his project about the War of Currents, which I had never heard of before, but he said he had a model of the electricity that they used and figures to go along with it. And by the end of the month, we'll begin prepping for the Special Olympics, which is organized by Ms. Casson and the Mentor Program, which I believe is in the beginning of May. And it's like the whole day, and everyone kind of comes outside and watches. It's a lot of fun. And also in May, AP tests are starting, so there's kind of a lot going on right now, especially with academics, with the quarter ending last week and report cards coming out today. But we're all really excited for break.
I think so.
So, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your report. Next up is our superintendent's report. Dr. Brand, would you like to take us through your updates?
I will. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. One item listed under the superintendent's report, and that's the Woburn Street Elementary School principal search update. I have 2 additional items just to also mention at this time, but I'm pleased to be able to share with the community, and this information was sent out this afternoon, the announcement of our Woburn Street School principal. As you know, we have been in the works for conducting a search. We had 3 wonderful candidates, and as often you like in these situations, that means it's difficult to make some determinations, but throughout the process, one candidate seemed to emerge as a great match for the school and its respective needs at this point in time, and it's with that that I'm pleased to announce that Ms. Suzanne Sullivan, currently principal in the Bill Ricca Public Schools, has accepted my offer to become the next principal of the Woburn Street School effective July 1st, 2019. Just very briefly on Ms. Sullivan's candidacy and what she brings. She has over 30 years of public education experience at the elementary level, having served in a variety of communities throughout Massachusetts. She has extensive experience as a classroom teacher, specifically at the 2nd grade level, and almost 10 years of experience as an elementary principal in the state of Massachusetts, serving Brimfield, Quaboag Regional, and Greenfield communities. She is, as I mentioned, currently a principal right now in Bill Ricca, specifically at the Parker Elementary School, where she leads a pre-K to 5 community of approximately 500 students and 100 staff. Feedback throughout the process, and this is an extensive process with lots and lots of information that's provided by staff and community, as well as members of our leadership team, pointed to her strengths as her commitment to student-centered decision-making, her attention to ensuring that everyone in her educational community has a voice in decision-making, and her focus on maintaining personal connections with adults and the students that she serves. So we're looking forward to Ms. Sullivan joining us in July, and as I mentioned earlier, I shared this information with the Woburn community this afternoon, and this press release has gone out now to the community and staff throughout Wilmington. Two other somewhat related in terms of leadership searches that just will take this opportunity, if I may, to mention. I've mentioned this before, that we are gearing up for the IT director, or Director of Instructional Technology and Digital Learning. That post has been out, and in fact, beginning tomorrow, work will commence on reviewing applications and starting to conduct interviews. We are nearby in proximity to a couple of other districts that are looking for the same position. So we want to move swiftly, but still embark upon a thorough search, and I'll keep you updated as we move forward. And just back to Woburn, and perhaps I should have mentioned it secondly, we are also preparing to move into the assistant principal search. As you know, our assistant principal there at Woburn is retiring at the end of the school year. This works out, I think, well in the timing, in that Ms. Sullivan, the principal designee will, not designee, but appointment, sorry, will have the opportunity to participate in that assistant principal search. So I think that that's wonderful for that school community. And with that, that's it for me this evening, unless there are any questions.
Great. Any questions for Dr. Brandt? That's an easy one tonight so far, huh? Okay. I don't see any old business, so moving on to new business, the first item being our end-of-year financial report audit. Who'd like to lead that?
Mr. Ruggiero.
Okay, I thought so.
Thank you. A while ago, I had given you, at the end of each fiscal year, we have to prepare a report for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that essentially shows every penny that came into the district and every penny that went out of the district. And we prepared that report, submitted it to DESC, and then it has to get audited by an audit firm. So this here is, it's not an audit report per se, it's a report, I'll read it, it's a report on applying agreed upon procedures over compliance applicable to Massachusetts school districts, end of the year financial report. So that's what you have in front of you. There was one finding, it's the same finding we've had for many years, and it's just, the town identifies certain expenses that they incur on behalf of the schools. So they give us a report for that. That's included in the end of the year report that I prepare. And we've been using, the town's been using the exact same methodology for as long as I've been here. It just is, it's not written down per se. So I have been working with the town accountant to put on paper the methodology they use. And again, like I said, it's been the same methodology that's been used many, many, many years, so.
Any questions for Mr. Ruggiero on the audit? No? Okay. All right, next item for business for us this evening is the Wilmington Middle School Program of Studies. And I think I saw Mr. Welch in the audience. Going to give us an update here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The Wilmington Middle School Program of Studies is, for the most part, unchanged this year from last, with one exception that I'll clarify in a moment. But our Program of Studies, once again, reflects the four main subjects that the students take while on team, the math, ELA, science, and social studies. It reflects our 7th and 8th graders' option of foreign language, where they have the option of taking either Italian, French, or Spanish. At the 6th grade level, they take an exploratory foreign language. Also, students who do not take a foreign language in 7th and 8th grade have the option of taking a reading class to build some reading supports. The Program of Studies reflects all of our unified arts classes, which include health, physical education, computer literacy, technology education, art, and media. The program of studies also clarifies the performing arts, where we have general music, but we have 3 performing groups which include our chorus, our band, and our strings ensemble group. Couple of things I do want to mention about the program of studies. First of all, so everyone is aware, there is currently a group of teachers being led by Dr. Quirk and Dr. Regan that are taking a deeper look at our program of studies to help lay the groundwork as the school prepares for the transition of Mr. Phillips starting in the fall. And one final clarification, the state of Massachusetts has recently adopted new standards in social studies. They are pretty drastic changes for the middle school social studies curriculum, which include an 8th grade civics program. Currently, we are in conversations with different textbooks companies to try to develop a pilot, which we would hope would start mid-year this coming year. Currently, we have not finalized plans with that pilot, but I feel we are close to picking a vendor that we will use. But moving forward, there should be some changes to the social studies portion of the program of studies. But until that has been updated and finalized, last year's is still there, but I think we should update it once the plan is set.
Any questions or comments, particularly with the social studies changes? Sounds fairly straightforward, and we know where we're at, but. I did notice one little thing. On page 10, the intro paragraph for world languages, I think this is really just a little edit that needs to be made. It talks about grades 7 and 8 world languages as a 2-year program covering the first year of the Wilmington High School foreign language curriculum. And then in parentheses, it says level 1A and 1B. Okay. To my knowledge, there is no more 1B at the high school level anymore. I think they combined
Yeah.
A and B into CP.
I will clarify the language
Okay.
with Mr. Brown at the formal
Yeah, I
CTO.
would double check just to make sure,
Yeah.
and I could be wrong, but we
Page
probably want to make
10.
sure we're consistent. Thank you, Mr. Ragsdale.
Along those same lines on page 3, at the end of the first paragraph, at the top of the page, it just looks like there's missing text because the last sentence there reads, students will add to their understanding by writing arguments, informational pieces, and narratives as outlined in the.
Oh, yeah.
Which paragraph was that?
This is the first paragraph at the top of page 3 under grade 6, this is part of the ELA.
Okay. I will have that fixed.
And I had one other comment, which is on the very first page under the non-discrimination policy. I think that it looks out of date, like I think that gender identity is supposed to be reflected in there, according with along with the state.
Okay.
We probably want to make sure we're
Yeah,
consistent
I think
with
that's
all
it,
of
yeah.
ours.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have one question. On page 9, it says reading students will participate in a reading course in lieu of a foreign language. Is that required, or do they choose that? Do they choose to participate in the reading class?
There are times we may require, we may strongly encourage and recommend to take it, yes.
In grade 6, 7, and 8?
I'm sorry, in 7th and 8th. In
7th
6th
and
grade reading is all students take reading.
Everyone does that,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or concerns for the, Mr. Ragsdale?
One more question.
Sure.
So for the piloting that you're saying that we're hoping to do for the civics,
Yes.
is that only for the grade 8 civics course, or is that also going to incorporate the civics project requirement from the new law?
It will be just the course to start, yes.
Okay.
There is I was talking to Dr. Quirk today, and it's,
Choose to be nice, which
choose to be nice,
I,
right?
I don't know if it is going to be fully rolled out
No,
next year.
not for next year, but that program has a
Yeah.
As a civics
civics
project.
component to it, project to it, so that may be or likely will be our
Yeah.
avenue for that.
Yes, we, at the middle school, we've started to introduce a program called Choose to Be Nice that would hopefully build through the students' 3 years, where the 8th grade year, there is a service project component to it. So it ties nicely to the new standard.
Quick question.
Sure.
Which languages are available to the 7th and 8th graders?
It is French, Spanish, and Italian.
Okay, so the Romance languages. All right.
Any other questions regarding the program of studies? No? Okay, we're being asked this evening to actually vote to accept or approve the program of studies. I know we've recommended a couple of little edits. Any further discussion on that or comfort level, Mrs. Bryson?
If there are gonna be changes to the social studies, will we receive that? Will then we amend this? I guess, how will that work if we approve this right now?
Well, there's a couple ways we could go. I mean, we could keep the sort of disclaimer that Kevin has put in there, or we could expand that out and explain what the potential for the change is. Or we could notify parents once we have a firm plan in place. For right now, it's really hanging on these vendors to see what they can provide us for next year, because this was not in the FY20 budget plan, so we should know that in the next few weeks. I don't know when this goes to print, does it, or when it gets posted or published?
We can, I would, this is for the coming school year, so I would think we have a lot of leeway
Okay.
to when we actually post it. It could probably be after the first of the year, when the school year is finished.
So I don't know if it's acceptable to sort of give it a little time, we can iron that out, and then we can bring that page back to the committee to look at, before, so we would hold on publishing it until we get that clarity.
So effectively, he's suggesting that we table taking a vote this evening until we see those changes. Okay.
Or did I hear, I thought I heard you say we vote on the majority except for that page?
I don't want to make a motion.
He doesn't want to get dragged into this.
That is what I suggested.
I think it makes sense, since we've reviewed it all, to, I would offer a motion
Okay.
that we accept all but the social studies as presented.
Okay,
With the revisions,
With
I
the
think, that we
revisions.
suggested.
Correct, with the
with the edits.
revision.
Are you offering that as a second? A second. Okay, any further discussion?
I think that's including the, on, what was it, page 2, the non-discrimination.
Yes.
additions.
Yeah, with the suggested edits, correct. Everybody's good with that? Okay, so we've got a motion, we've got a second, we've had our discussion. We ready to take a vote as suggested? Okay, great. All those in favor? That looks like unanimous to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Welch, thank you for your time and presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item up is a coordinated program review progress report. Who's going to take us through that?
Well, I'll start briefly, and then I'll certainly turn it over. Ms. Brown-Legrand is here, and Dr. Regan, and this is in your packet, item number 7C. As the committee knows, and hopefully the community is well aware, one of the focal points for a lot of the work over the course of this year has been to respond to the recent coordinated program review. You've received some updates, as you know, at different points in time over the course of this year. And in the packet is a memo from Allison Bryan that provides the most recent update that was a collection or a body of work that was just submitted. The memo does a nice job to outline the respective work. Again, I'll reiterate my thanks on behalf of the committee and the community to both of them, who have put in countless and countless hours. This may be just captured in a memo, but I can attest to the fact that what's behind this is an awful lot of work that doesn't maybe come through to the average person. But we thank them for their leadership. I'll turn it over to Brian or Alice if they wish to have more to add, or certainly answer any questions you have. I won't go through each one, but it's consistent with the format in the past, highlighting the indicator specifically that comes from the Department of Education, the work that had to be completed, and then the status based upon our submission.
I think Christine Murray might be? No. Christine Murray did a lot of work. I was going to have you present with.
Thank you.
Sorry, Christine.
Do you want me to do the whole thing, Alice, or do you want me to? Oh, my goodness. Yeah, you might have to for special ed. So not to sort of reread everything here, but just for the public at home, you can see that we had 7 indicators that they were looking for action on. 6 of them were marked as approved, completed, which is exactly what we want. Under special education, the one that was not yet completed has to do with the fact that the district is undergoing an evaluation by an outside consultant of the special education program. So Alice did provide them with proof that that has been commenced, but they won't check that box until that's finished. So that's still happening now, I think, or is it, yeah?
Through the end of May.
Through the end of
and
May.
They won't, give us full approval until the report's submitted.
Yeah.
Yeah. They get updates, I've given them a couple of updates since about guiding questions and focal areas, but, yeah.
So that's certainly good news. I know there were many, many records that had to be pulled by Alice's office and Alice and reviewed and sent in, so there was a lot of work to clear up these indicators for special education. Under civil rights, Christine led the charge. We presented to you, and I think it was our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, around the bullying prevention intervention plan. That's what CR 10B was all about. So that is currently still in the public comment stage, so it's posted online. We sent out a link to that to all families, along with a link to a survey that they can use to give anonymous feedback. Christine, Alice, and I have a meeting on the books for April 22nd, I think, or 23rd, to go over any or all public comments that we have collected, and then we will see how those can be incorporated into the plan, and then I would have to check in with Dr. Brown whether or not we want to bring that back to the committee or whether that just gets updated. The state has a copy of the draft proposals, a draft plan, so they know where we're at. They're just waiting for us to finalize it. And then the other civil rights piece that is not yet corrected has to do with compliance to CR 24, which has to do with bias in curriculum, and this is what they want to be done is training for staff, and I just haven't been able to get to all 8 buildings. I think we have 3 left, and I've got them on the calendar, so that will happen in the next few weeks. I've developed a slide deck and presentation for staff members. I present, we answer questions, we share a 2-page form that we've created that teachers can use as sort of a guiding checklist when they're looking at curriculum materials. And that's sort of step 1 that the state wanted us to do. And then going forward, we would continue to provide this training, but also coming up with a plan to sort of take a look at our different programs in a cyclical manner, how we can make sure that we're checking on a regular basis for bias in our curriculum materials. So because I haven't gotten all that training done yet, that's still marked as incomplete, but the deadline for that is actually not until, I think it's coming up, but it wasn't in this March deadline. So we'll still make that happen on time. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Ragsdale?
So for CR 24 that you were just discussing, what evidence is due on the 18th? And
So they would like to see well, they already have a copy of the slide deck, but I'll submit that again, but they basically want proof that I've been at all of the buildings and done the trainings, so I'm having a sign-in sheet completed every time I go, so we'll be submitting that as evidence to show that the trainings, and a schedule, that it's been completed, these buildings on these dates, and that's basically the last piece that they're looking for.
okay, so even though there are a few buildings that will be left, you'll have a schedule and saying, these have been done and these are
Well, by the May
intended to be.
19th date, I will have them all done. So,
Okay,
yeah.
but by the 18th, which is listed
Correct.
in the memo
Yes.
that you
Yes,
just
yes, by
provided.
April, correct, yes, yeah. They will not be completed by then, but there'll be a schedule as to when they're on the calendar. So I think the last one I do is the first week of May, so they'll have that schedule, and then by the 18th of May or 19th of May, what do we say, 22nd of May, I'll submit all of those attendance
I
sheets.
thought it would be hard to get trainings in 8 days over
Yeah,
school
yeah,
vacation week.
Right, sorry,
April date is just a progress report.
right,
So that you send out for where you are.
right, thank you.
Any other comments? Mrs. Bryson?
So just two comments. So the public comment for the plan, the last date for community and parents and families to do that is April 20th.
Correct.
So I just want to make that public so everyone knows to make sure they fill that out before the 20th. And then you'll be meeting on the 22nd to review all of that data.
Yes.
And could we see at one of our future meetings that guiding checklist to check materials for bias? It would be
Sure.
interesting to look through it and
Yep.
make it public if we were able to do that for
Sure.
families. Great. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time. We know that this is a lot of work, and we appreciate your efforts to make sure that we're all on track. So thank you. All right, our next item under new business is the special education reorganization. Dr. Brandt.
Thank you. Item 7D, there is a memo to accompany this in the packet. Student Support Services reorganization. And this evening, I have a slide show that will be uploaded into the packet as well as we move forward. I think it's fair to say that over the course of the last number of months, as I've started to gather a deeper sense of the district as a whole, there have been a number of concerns of which I've raised previously through my entry plan that have surfaced regarding special education specifically in our programs and services throughout the district. This really has been, as you know, a large focal point of much of the feedback that I have received over the course of the last number of months. I think with that, it's fair to say that we have a lot of room for improvement in terms of focusing on that going forward, and specifically around the opportunity for administration and oversight. And what this memo attempts to do is provide to you a recommendation or a proposal for, I'm using the term restructuring of the department, and with that, the eye towards improving the services for our families and, of course, our students here in the district. I think it's really important to note at the outset that when people think about special education, I think the default position sometimes is to think of it as a department alone, and it's not. It falls under a department, and in fact is one of many areas that the Department of Student Support Services, as we call it here, it might be called something different in different districts, but it's one in terms of a spectrum of responsibilities or domains or portfolios, whatever term you might wish. The fact of the matter is it's the largest, both in terms of personnel, programs, and operating budget, but it is not the only one that falls under the purview of student support services. I've just mentioned some of the other areas there. A lot of this discussion is captured in the coordinated program review. As an example, social emotional learning, school counseling, excuse me, I'm sorry, civil rights, just to name a few. And so the reality is that they're falling under that department. And equally, the reality is that the monitoring of those, the previous item around the coordinated program review is one example of not only local but also federal laws that many, if not arguably all of these programs have to comply with and are monitored with. And so that is a complexity that is real, it's ever-changing, and I think with that, so too places the demands upon the leadership, those that are in charge, or charged rather, with overseeing programs and services throughout the district. The leadership model currently in this department, in the district, really looks like this. We have a 1.0 FTE, again, for members of the community, full-time equivalent, 1.0 FTE Director of Student Support Services. That is, as you know, Ms. Brown-LeGrand. Oversees all programs, services, and personnel that fall under the department. Christine Murray represents the 1.0 FTE, Coordinator of Behavioral Health. And we have a 0.4 FTE, so that's right, that's not, it's not a full-time person. In fact, less than half represented by what we term the Special Education CTL. And that person is represented by one full-time person. 0.6 responsibilities approximately are teaching responsibilities at the high school in special education. 0.4, that 0.4 FTE is to provide some degree of support at both middle school and high school. There are, I think, inherent with that model a number of challenges. First off, the scope of responsibilities. As alluded to a few moments ago, it is far more than just special education. And I think that that's really important to highlight. With that, we ask one person to oversee that department. The fact of the matter is an awful lot of time, the majority of time is consumed by special education. That's fair, but again, not exclusively. And that responsibility of overseeing those programs, of which we're trying to grow, we are trying to foster in an effort to also keep students, of course, in district, and that becomes, or that adds another layer of complexity. So in essence, and we could slice and sort of dissect this in different ways, but the last bullet, I think, is fair to say, and that is, from a leadership perspective, we currently really have approximately 1.4 FTEs to oversee all programming within special education across the district. Of course, that's not exactly true to say because, as I've said a number of times, the director oversees multiple other programs. So it's not exactly that a full-time commitment can be said to be applied to special education. But a lot of schools, a lot of programs, a lot of fiscal resources in the district really falling under the oversight of few, I would argue. So the reorganization that I'm proposing and would like to share with you for your consideration is trying to get at this and trying to support the expansion of additional oversight to help guide and to help lead our programs. It really comes to recognizing that, and again, the suggestion that I think that we're understaffed as it relates to the administrative or leadership oversight in the district, or in the district as it relates to this department. And the proposal is that of adding new administrative position to help with this and to provide greater support specifically to the area of special education. So the plan that is outlined in the memo, and just very briefly here, would be to create the position of Coordinator of Special Education, using that title for a couple of, it's more than just a title, of course, but to be somewhat consistent with our Coordinator of Social Emotional Learning. And that this position would help oversee pre-K to 12 special education. We would eliminate the .4 special education CTL position, as well as the .6 FTE teaching component. So essentially repurposing a 1.0 FTE into this coordinator of special education. I think there are a number of benefits to consider for such a proposal. With your support to move forward with this, and I think that these are just highlight some of them. First off, it would provide additional capacity to help support our director and to help try and provide more time to be in schools, to be interfacing with staff, and to help problem solve, et cetera, our various programs over, again, 8 schools. And I think that that's an important piece to keep in mind in our context here in Wilmington. Consistency in terms of the programming, helping support team meetings and transitions, of which I don't need to tell you we have many, of course, in this district, again, based upon our physical structure. And also to provide that greater capacity that the director in this model or this proposal still ultimately holds the responsibility to oversee special education. However, when and as other things do emerge and pop up, and they do almost daily, this would provide, again, additional capacity. And I think with that, should we move forward with this, it provides us an important opportunity to sort of take a step back, take a look at our structure of the department, and to take a look at our evaluative oversight and our consistency internally throughout the district. This I know is hard to read on this slide here, but it is also included in the packet for those that might be interested. This is just a snapshot, certainly only just that, of SEAM districts. SEAM, as you know, again, is a collaborative that we're a member with. It provides a view of students, special education students, number of schools, et cetera, it's really hard to make, I think it's fair to say, an apple-to-apple comparison if one was interested in what the model looks like. But I think to me what jumps out here is where we sort of stand in comparison to other districts as it relates to, and particularly the largest middle band of that table, in terms of some of the other support positions that some of the other districts have. And assistant director, some do, some don't, and so on. But I know that sometimes there's interest in taking a look at how we compare to other districts. So next steps, in no particular order, that I would suggest would be of consideration to move forward with this proposal. It's important to point out that talks have begun with the Wilmington Teachers Association. That's necessary here because the CTL position is embedded in the contract. And so because of that, it's fair and appropriate to say that it would be impact bargaining because this proposal centers around restructuring a CTL position. I'm happy to say that those talks have, started, have been very positive, and I'm confident that we, again, with your approval to move forward in this, can move towards an end with the WTA that will be supportive of this final position. Certainly, if we are to move forward with this proposal needs to be shared with the many staff throughout the district that fall under the umbrella of student support services. Again, there are many, and far more than just special education. Team chairs, school counselors, psychologists, therapists, et cetera. There are many. And certainly this is a plan that would impact them. That needs to be clearly communicated. In the packet, I don't highlight it here, but there's a proposed job description or a draft job description. It doesn't have a watermark across it right now to say draft, but in essence it should be considered that. But it's what the thinking is around what the respective responsibilities would be for this coordinator of special education, if we're going to move forward with it. If we were to, I think it's an important opportunity to take a look at the organization of student support services as a whole. And finally, but certainly not least important, is ultimately to have this committee's approval of us to go forward. I would suggest to you that I see this as a budget neutral proposal, because it is taking the equivalent of 1.0 FTE, but restructuring that position. Ultimately, I recognize it's a new administrative position, and certainly an expansion of administration. And to that end, I think it only appropriate that as a governing body, you would approve that. So I'm not looking for that approval tonight. This is meant to be information only, and certainly the opportunity to take questions you have to help provide further clarity or insight, with the hope, though, that perhaps at your next meeting, depending on how the discussion goes, we could seek your approval to move forward. So.
Mr. Bjork, I saw your hand.
So the 0.6 teaching aspect,
Yeah.
is that currently handled by a licensed special ed teacher?
It is.
All right, and I see what you're looking to do is eliminate that and absorb it by the existing staff. My only concern there is I get the feeling that the special ed teachers are taxed throughout the district. Is that a lot of strain? I mean, I'm all for creating this position, but if budget would allow, I hate to see that 0.6 be absorbed as opposed to bringing somebody in to take that workload.
If I may? Sure. Thank you for the question, and it's an important one. So just to put into context, that 0.6 teacher, if you will, is currently here at the high school. And in fact, as I understand it, and Ms. Brown-LeGrand can expand upon this if I misspeak, but in fact, over the last, at least this year, if not the last couple, I think there's been a gentle, if you will, paring back on reducing that 0.6, because caseloads, respectively, for across the board at the high school only have somewhat declined. And that mirrors, to some degree, I think, our decline in population, too, at the high school. So So the understanding here, my understanding here in making this proposal is that with the current special education staffing, teachers that we have at the high school, the existing caseloads, based upon what we know before us right now, can be absorbed, but not become problematic in terms of the other teachers existing to take on the additional students. And it's, again, it's just the high school. Would you add anything, Alice? Or? Okay.
This year, the numbers of students on that individual's caseload was pulled back, in part in an effort to provide more support 6 through 12 versus more what being focused at the high school. And I think with the declining enrollment, if you look at the special ed staff between the middle school and high school, with more students that have IEPs at the middle school, they actually have the same amount of special ed staff. Within one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Within one, I believe, within one person, to be specific.
You consider this budget neutral, but I would have to, I would make an assumption that a salary for this administrative position would be more than a 0.6 and a 0.4 position for at this level. Is that not accurate?
It would be, yeah, there would be probably, well, it depends, I think it depends on the experience that we have right now, if we were to look at an apple-to-apple comparison and what the proposed salary would be for this position.
If I may, the CTL position always also includes a stipend, so that would go away as well. So as best we can tell, it's budget neutral. Now, may it be a little bit higher? Possibly, but it's something that we can figure out without any issues from a budgetary standpoint.
Thank you.
You got any other questions or comments, Mrs. Newhouse?
I agree with Steve that one of my concerns was taking away the teaching component, whether or not it would impact any of our high school programs. But if they're confident that it won't, I'm comfortable. And I think this is a great move adding this administrator on, because I know when we switched over to the Director of Student Support Services a few years back, and it was presented at the CPAC meeting at the time. Many of us questioned, how could one person do this full job description? And, you know, I think the district's done a great job with doing the job, but it's definitely somewhere, a spot that we need to add more personnel. And, you know, if we need to find more budget, I would support it then as well.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, so this is kind of step one. You're not actually seeking us to put our stamp of approval on this evening, but to get the ball rolling. Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think that covers all of our agenda items under new business this evening, which brings us to public comment. Anybody? No, you good? You said enough last night? Yeah, okay. All right. Next item is subcommittee reports. Any subcommittee reports? No, I was just going to share, yeah, just the evaluation. So tonight is literally the drop-dead deadline to get your individual report in if you have not. What? Whoa! Excellent. Good job, everyone. So our evaluation subcommittee meeting will be tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock with the intent to compile our individual evaluations into the summative evaluation. And we have high hopes of getting that accomplished tomorrow morning so that we will present it on April 24th. Okay? No other subcommittee reports? Okay. Any correspondence? Mrs. Burns is not here, so I think we're good there. All right, under future subcommittee, future school committee meeting dates and notable agenda items, we are quickly approaching our town election, which means Tom and I are quickly approaching our last meeting, our last regular planned meeting, bearing no surprises between now and then. So I just wanted to make note, we're in a unique situation. Traditionally, this committee has always had its reorganization. So by reorganization, our selection of chairperson, vice chair, and secretary. Traditionally, we have always done that after the election. But being that we're in a unique situation this year where the sitting chair, being myself, won't be there on that first meeting after the election. I'm just putting it out there. The other thing that I certainly felt as a new committee member, your very first meeting, you're asked to help choose a chair, a vice chair, and secretary who might be people you don't know. And it's kind of an awkward position to be in. I think we've all experienced it, and we're going to have at least 2 new people. So I just want to acknowledge that, put it out there, wanted to see if anyone else had any thoughts or concerns. We've been very transparent about our process this year, so just wanted to share that.
I would just add, I do agree with that. I know that my first meeting, it felt awkward
Yeah, it does.
yeah.
It does.
And at that point, we were doing nominations alphabetically, so
Yeah.
my name, I was asked to
Right.
make a nomination.
Yeah. I think I was too, my very first meeting, and you're kind of shell-shocked, right? You don't even know what's going on, so I just wanted to put that out there. I did a little research. There is nothing to say that we have to do it after the election. Obviously, it's the will of the committee. I won't be here, so I have no personal stake. I just wanted to acknowledge it. Okay. So, kind of think about it.
So, well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Are you posing this so that, are you proposing that someone may offer a motion?
They could. I just wanted to acknowledge it. Certainly, the piece about the chair not being here can easily be handled by having the superintendent open the meeting, and then the first item on the agenda would be to have the school committee reorganization. But, it's not really my call at this point. I just wanted to acknowledge it if anyone else had been feeling it or being concerned about it. Mr. Talbot?
Would we be involved in the voting for it, considering we're not going to be?
Right, so if the decision and the will of the committee was to just keep things as is, which may be the case, then no, we won't be here. But if somebody decided, geez, that does concern me and I want to offer a motion to do it sooner, that's okay too.
So is that suggestion being that we would reorganize before the new members have been sworn in and joined?
Potentially, yes. And we don't have to make a decision this evening either. I just wanted to put it out there. Because this is, as far as I can tell, I've kind of asked around people that have been on the committee before, this hasn't happened in a very long time. The sitting chair has always been here, so. Mrs. Bryson?
If we were going to decide to do that, we would have to decide tonight. We couldn't decide between, how would we decide if we don't decide right
Yeah,
now? I
I
guess,
mean,
so
yeah.
I'm in 2 spots where I too felt it was very awkward when I was the week after I had been elected, and I remember passing, thinking I have to pass. Like, I have no idea because I don't feel like I'm at liberty to actually vote on this. So that part seems like, well, we should just do it beforehand. But then again, those people who are being elected will be serving with us, and so therefore should be a part of that reorg, because as I'm kind of in a funny spot, and Mrs. Burns is not here. So
Correct.
that,
Right.
I think, makes it just a little bit tricky, because now we're not really deciding
Correct.
together.
Right.
So I'm not sure we can really do anything, but I think, or can we? I don't know. If we don't decide tonight, we can't, essentially.
One more meeting at the 24th?
Correct. We have the 24th would be our last meeting.
I suppose we could vote that night. Yeah, I suppose we could decide that night.
It's worth everybody thinking about. I would think that if we did make a motion to do this, I would think we might want to make it a policy to do it each year that way. So, and again, from my perspective, my first meeting, I would have been just fine if they had chosen before.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay, well, so I just wanted to be transparent and put it out there, acknowledge the fact that this hasn't happened It's certainly not in my tenure, and in asking other people that came before me had this happened, and they couldn't remember either. So just wanted to be transparent about it, give people some food for thought. There you go. All right, you're welcome. All right, that being the case, we've got our next couple of meetings, April 24th and then May 8th. We've got some exciting dates coming up. This is the time of year that I will be sad that I won't be there for, because it's all the fun stuff, right? So we've got the STEM Fair coming up. We have the annual Middle School Science and Tech Fair, which I know is an awesome event. We've got school vacation, thank goodness. And we have a couple of the walks going on, the Wham Walks over at the Boutwell, Wildwood, Shawshene, and Woburn Street. So I think that brings us to our last agenda item of this evening, and we have proposed before us an executive session from which we will not return. The motion being the Wilmington School Committee will vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Would somebody like to offer that as a motion?
Hello.
Thank you so much. Is there a second? Great, thank you. This requires a roll call vote. Mr. Bjork?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Broussard, yes. Mrs. Bryson?
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot? Mr. Ragsdale first, then Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
I don't know if we got that right, but.
I was looking down the line and said, wait a minute. My alphabetical order is not correct. So great, thank you. And we're gonna-